So this is where some more of the burning starts. Yeah. You gotta look real close. But there's better evidence further on down the road. It's very subtle. See here, the tips of the grass are burned right here. And so it goes on down. As you can see, the tips of these blades of grass are burned. Likewise down here. It's very subtle, but when you know what you're looking for, when you know what you're looking at, and no, it's not a guy. There's some better spots down here. Today is Thursday the 14th. Yeah. See it now? Once you see it, it's easy to see. You see that it turns to ash when you grab one of the blackened pieces, and it's just the tips of the blades of grass. And then there's nothing else all the way down. But there's some better spots a little further down that I saw on Tuesday. Today's Thursday, May 14th. On Tuesday night on my walk, I noticed some of these scorched trenches. It must be down a little further. And then yesterday, on Wednesday, see the ash, the soot. Wednesday, I didn't even remember that I was going to come, catch a clip of that, add it to the library till I was halfway through with my walk. And so I thought I'd come catch it today. And my point is, these burn spots, they only last. A week later, it's only half as evident. And 2 weeks later, you can almost not even see it. So I know these had to happen pretty recently. And it's not going to be to convince or persuade anyone that doesn't already know what we're looking at. But I am going to talk, not yet, after I show you these other clips down here a little further, about the reason why people would prefer to think that it's a guy with a weed burner. For the obvious reasons, because electricity coming up out of the ground burning things, that's a problem for everyone. A guy coming out with a weed burner and burning some spots in the trenches, well, that's not a problem for anyone. The other thing is, it creates an existential crisis. Now, maybe not these, the more subtle spots. And these aren't as subtle as you might think. You see all that ash in there? So this whole area from right here, all these patches, all in here, the tips of all of these blades of grasses are burned. Over here, same thing. As we go down, you dig in a little bit, and it's intermixed burn and unburn. And now these things, oh, that's actually a pretty good one. You can see how it's kind of just burned on the one side. Here's a good one where it's just the tip. Ooh, it fell. It was a little too burnt to be playing with like that. And so all along here, you can see the intermittent burn spots. When you get a little closer, it becomes obvious. And so this isn't a guy taking a weed burner up here along this edge, but there's a reason people want to believe that. It creates an existential crisis. Like I said, not necessarily these ones. You could write these off and say, well, it's pretty subtle. You can understand why people wouldn't see that. They just walk by and not notice. But all the other ones that I've been showing you for 8 years, trees burning on the inside, cars melting in parking lots. Some of them are even right down here. You can see how these are all burned just along the edge, along one edge of the blade of grass. If I could grab it and quit playing around with it. And if it would focus, it's not going to help. So these are pretty subtle. You can see a lot of the black tips, just the tips of the blades of grass. And so it goes on down the ditch, but it's easy to say, well, I can understand why people wouldn't notice this. You got to have a keen eye for it. But when we're talking about the more obvious stuff, it creates an existential crisis. Because you've based 99.9% of your whole self-image and worldview. See, when you back away a little bit, it's burned all through here, all in here. So you could write this off and say, I see why people wouldn't notice this. This is pretty subtle, and it goes all the way down the whole trench. And I know this happened recently. In a week or two, see here, looks green on top. Lift it up, get in there. And it's all burned. But when we're talking about the more obvious stuff that I've been tracking for 8 years, the ash effect and the Milgram effect are what you've based your whole self-image and worldview on. What the authorities say and the general consensus, the wisdom of the collective. And you now know that you can neither trust either of those two things. So I'll talk a little bit more about that once we roll on from here. See all the tips? It's just the tips of these blades. Another thing is, I forgot about this Wednesday. I had forgotten because I've documented these scorched trenches 5 or 6 times. And all I'm showing you is that it's all throughout here. But when you back away just a little bit, you can't hardly see it. You got to get up pretty close. You got to know what you're looking at. So these are more subtle. It's understandable why people, here's a bunch of that. Holy shit, check this out. And then when you back away, can't even see it. I'm seeing these same things all the way down the trench here, both sides. And so it's understandable. Oh, here we go, a couple of bigger pieces. Unburned on the bottom. See if we can get it to focus in here. And this one too, this one's burned. So those are kind of, oh, let's see if we can get this one to give us a little bit of a show. You can see that spot right there. See if we can dump that out. See the ash coming out from inside that stick. One more spot before someone comes up and says, hey, what do you think you're doing? So I got to pop up here, make it obvious what I'm doing. I'm watching your world burn because you don't seem to notice. But these are more subtle. It's easy to understand why people don't notice stuff like what I just showed you. But when it comes to the obvious stuff, like trees burning on the inside, houses burning, and none of the trees or shrubs or weeds or leaves around the house is burning, cars turning into a puddle of melted liquid metal in an asphalt parking lot where there's nothing flammable, there is no excuse for why the rest of the world can't see that after I've been documenting the quantity of it that I have, not just pulling clips off the news, taking my own videos in 10 different states. And so the ash effect is your tendency to go with what everyone else believes. If 1,000 other people believe and perceive and know something to be true, then so do you. Likewise with the authorities. That's the Milgram effect, whatever the experts think and perceive and believe. And you now know you can trust neither of those two things, and that's what you've based 99.9% of your whole self-image and worldview upon, is the collective and the individual. The collective and the authorities. I've mentioned the ash effect and the Milgram effect a million times on this channel, so I won't go in depth. The ash effect is a social experiment that they test people, bring them into a room, put them at a table with 10 other people, and the subject of the study thinks that the other 9 people around the table are also being tested in the study. But they're actually in on it. With the scientist who's conducting the test, they're pretending like they too are subjects of the study. There's only one subject of this study. And they show you a picture of a triangle. They don't show you, they show everyone else around the table first. What do you see here? And it's obviously a triangle. And that person says a square. A square, a square, and around the table they go, and everyone says they see a square. By the time it gets around to the person who's actually the test subject of this psychological case study, they say a square, and that's understandable. The only reason you perceive a square to be a square or a circle to be a circle, because that's what everyone around you said it was for your whole life. And you can take the download that quick and edit your perception of reality in order that it conforms with the rest of the group. And generally there's a truth to that. It's not a fault or a flaw. Generally, if everyone perceives and believes and understands and knows something to be true, then you can bank on that. You can just go with, yep, that's what it is, because everyone agrees, so it must be right. You can no longer rely upon that when you see the world around us burning from the inside and no one notices it. You can no longer trust on that which you've based your entire perception of reality on. That is the ash effect, the ash experiment. And they've done it in many different settings, repeated the results using different things. What shape is this? Which line is longer, A, B, or C? Other very simple things where they know, you know the answer. You know this is a square, that's a circle, this is a triangle. They make it so simple, it's obviously that you know the right answer. But people will change their perception and what they've always known to be true on things that are really simple and straightforward. Like, what shape is this? And they'll change it that quickly based on what the other 9 people around the table think. And likewise, that's why you ever believed it was a square or a circle to begin with, because that's what everyone around you said. So that's the ash effect. The Milgram effect is whatever the authorities and the experts say. We're also going to check out these fence posts since we happen to be passing by them. They got more of these charcoal burn spots. Whatever the experts say. Well, what are you, an expert on fire, Jeff? What are you, an expert on electricity? What do you know? I think if this were really happening, other people would see it too, not just you. So obviously it's not really happening. You haven't actually discovered a phenomenon, a force of nature that no one's ever noticed. Or other people would notice it too. And the experts, I think the experts would be telling us about this. You're no expert, Jeff. You're nobody. Charcoal. This one's got a little moss grown over it, but all that black is also charcoal. You can see the spots here, all along here. So, those two things are what you've based your entire self-image and worldview on. These all have a couple spots here and there. That's a charcoal spot. They all have a few little spots on them, but there's a few that have bigger spots. And so, charcoal, it's a little hard to get that one. And these are older, these have been burned a few years. But that's what we base our entire perception of reality on. If the experts say something is something, well then that's what it is, because they're the experts. What do you know about electricity or fire, Jeff? You're a nobody. And when millions and millions of other people don't see it, well, I think if this were really happening like you say, you wouldn't be the only one to notice it. And that's what you've based your entire world upon. And that's what I mean when I say it gives you an existential crisis. Your whole perception of reality. You know you can no longer rely on everyone else and whatever they agree upon and perceive and believe or know to be true. Because you know this is really happening and they can't see it. So they are no longer a reliable compass. They can no longer be your North Star. They are no longer effective at navigating this environment and saying, I'll just take a census and whatever everyone else believes, then that's probably true and I'll just go with that. That way I don't have to think for myself and do a lot of research and burn all those calories. I'll just go with whatever the consensus is. Likewise, experts. It doesn't take tens of thousands of experts. They're the one or two experts in your mind, in the general person's mind, is the equivalent of 1,000 or 2,000 average people. And those two things are what you base your whole world on. Growing up, whether it's the teachers or your parents, they're an authority figure until you've grown up and you see them as no smarter than you. But those two things, the Ash effect and the Milgram effect. The Milgram effect was a psychological case study where they showed that people will do anything so long as the person telling them to do it is wearing a lab coat and holding a clipboard. And they are the expert, the authority on the subject matter, in the subject of science or medicine. Likewise with religion. And you can combine the two and come up with Saint Fauci, his holy Saint Fauci. So, that's why a lot of people took the jab. Because your neighbors and your family and friends and everyone at school, the peer pressure, and they conform to the consensus of the majority of the people around them. Generally, when you ask a person, what position do you take on this subject matter? They take a survey and find out where everyone else stands on that subject matter and then try to position themselves in the middle. For a sheep, your safest place is right in the middle of the herd. You get out to the edge of the herd or the flock of sheep, and that's where a predator is most likely to strike. So they might not go dead center in the middle of the herd. They might go off closer to one edge or the other, but they generally take a position. They map out the position everyone else takes on this subject matter, and then place put their own pin on the board in proximity to whatever everyone else thinks. That way, you can maintain your good standing position within the tribe. Because no one can survive, much less thrive, in any culture unless you conform to the traditions of that culture. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. And that's what each and every one of us has based all of our worldview upon. We had no other choice. Growing up, you couldn't think for yourself. You were a child. You only had one option. Ask other people to explain things to you and take their word for it. But now you've come to a point where you're going to have to abandon both of those things, which is what you've used as your compass to create your map, to charter reality. Now you're in uncharted territory because you know you can no longer rely on the tribe, the general consensus reality, by taking a survey and thinking, well, if 8 billion people can't see this, then it must not really be happening. And this is why people would prefer to say that's just a guy taking a weed burner to the edge of the trench. For the obvious reason, because electricity coming up out of the ground and burning shit, that's a problem for everyone. A guy burning a trench with a weed burner, that's not a problem for anyone. But the less obvious reasons is the two that I just stated. When it's not so subtle, like those burns on the edge of the trench, but it's glaringly obvious, like the trees burning on the inside, all around us by the trillions, cars melting in the middle of asphalt parking lots where there's no flammable material anywhere around them, and houses. Those are just the three major ones. There's a lot of other burn signatures that match the pattern of electricity that I've documented for the last 8 years. But it brings you to that crossroads, that existential crisis. Your whole existence is at stake. And people will fight like their life depends on it, because it does. It is the death of their self-image and worldview, their self-image, self-defense, self-preservation instinct, fight, flight, or freeze. Those all kick in when you start threatening their worldview. That's their way of life. We don't just go to war when someone's threatening your physical life. We go to war when someone's threatening your way of life, economically and otherwise, resources. And when you present someone with something like the plasma fire phenomenon, that's a threat to their whole world, their self-image, their worldview, their cosmology, and their paradigm. And they start fighting back. It's like I've said, we have a mental immune system that attacks the foreign substance with antibodies to kill the foreign substance. When you show them foreign information, just like your biological immune system, when there's a foreign substance that enters into the body, they send out the white blood cells and the other antibodies to go attack that foreign substance because it's a threat to the body and the biological systems. Well, we also have a mental immune system that is threatened by foreign information. And so they will start fighting to survive, to keep their paradigm alive, like their life depends on it, because it does. Their whole life is based within this world, this paradigm, this cosmology that the rest of the tribe agrees upon, and most of our worldview overlaps. And when you show them something that completely destroys the two things that they have used to map out reality, the collective wisdom, and there's places where it's true. Jelly beans. How many jelly beans are in this jar? You ask 100 people how many jelly beans are in the jar, and they'll all give different answers. And if you average out those answers, you'll come up with a number that's closer to the actual number of jelly beans in the jar than any one of the people's personal responses that they gave to the question. It is true. There is very reliable. It's not a fault or a flaw for someone to say, oh, you don't think for yourself, you just believe everyone else. It's necessary. It works. It's a good strategy for success in life because it works. And that's why this is so threatening, because when you see now that there are certain times and places where you're not going to be able to rely upon that, now what are you going to do? You're going to have to go it alone. Likewise with the experts, the authorities on these subject matters. You can no longer defer to the experts or to the general consensus, which is what all of us have based 99.9% of our whole worldview upon. And when you see plasma fire in the quantities that I've documented it in the last 8 years, there is no excuse for why people don't notice. The burned trenches, you could see why. I can see why people don't notice that. They're just walking by, and especially unless you get up close, you can't even notice. But with all of the other evidence that I've documented over the last 8 years that's so glaringly obvious, there is no excuse. There is no way you can say, oh, that's understandable. I get why people don't notice. Nope. It changes your perception of those people and how reliable their perception of reality is. And you know, it's some sort of self-preservation kicking in. They have selective sight. They choose not to see it. It's so glaringly obvious, you can't just dismiss it. So, that's why I say there's an existential crisis that comes about when a person comes to this point of shall I or shan't I accept my own eyes and what I'm seeing here when Jeff's showing me the trees are burning on the inside out. Just like when they show you a triangle and you can clearly see it's a triangle, trusting your own perception, and the other 9 people around the table say it's a square, you come to that point. Do I go with what everyone else says they believe and see and perceive and know to be true about this shape? Or do I use my own senses? And so on this consciousness farm where we all live, where consciousness is being cultivated, due to the simple economic rules of supply and demand, one type of consciousness is far more valuable than the other simply because there's a less of a supply of it. People that think for themselves, trust their own perception, rely on their own information processor, those are very slim in number, very few, very rare. The C19 operation was a filtration. Those who took it did so because of the Ash effect and the Milgram effect. Because everyone else was, and the peer pressure that comes about, all the stars were telling you how they're going and getting it, and the authorities and the experts were all telling you should and that they're doing it too. And so it was a filtration device. Through a process of self-selection, people revealed the qualities of their character and consciousness, the fiber of their being, the grain of the wood that they're made out of, the substance of the content of their character. And the vast majority went along with the authorities and the consensus of what everyone else seems to perceive that we should do. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it. Likewise, plasma fire is also a filtration device based on some of the same qualities of character and consciousness. And that's the only way to extract those qualities of consciousness that you're trying to, through a distillation process, a refinement process, a purification that ejects all the impurities, and what you're left with is a concentrate of those aspects, like the essential oils. After you've thrown away 99% of the plant, you're left with the essence of what it is you wanted out of that plant. Likewise here on the consciousness farm, how do you figure out who's who? Well, you got to get them to show their true colors. How do you do that? Well, you put them through these processes, a process of self-selection, and they reveal their true colors through their own choices. No one was forced. No one was held down and had it plunged in their arm. They made sure not to cross that line. They made it very inconvenient. There was a lot of pressure that they put on people, made it very inconvenient for those who choose not to do this. But they made sure not to cross the line of free will. That would defeat their own purposes, undermine the process of the refinement and distillation, screening process, the filtration process. If you force people, yet people will still tell you, they made me take it. Yeah, I had to. They made me to keep my job. They made me do it to fly on an airplane. You chose to. You've got your priorities and your principles, and you expressed those through your standards of behavior. Likewise, plasma fire is just as much of a filtration process as the C19 was. And most people, they don't want to see the truth. Even if they can see it, they've watched enough of my videos, they can see damn well this is happening. It will cost them their good standing membership within the tribe. That's what David Icke calls the hassle-free zone. When you reach the edge of the herd, the flock of sheep, you get out there to the edge. If you go beyond this barrier, the hassle-free zone, so long as you stay within the herd and the position you take on any given subject matter is one that is agreed upon by some portion of the rest of the flock, you're okay. You don't get hassled too much. Soon as you step outside that hassle-free zone and start thinking for yourself, you start blazing a trail outward beyond that hassle-free zone barrier. The rest of the flock hassles you back in and tries to insult you, belittle you, berate you, exile you, alienate you, ostracize you. And so it will cost them their good standing membership within the herd and the tribe. And that is an essential to live. In our modern society, you can go it alone. We've got enough of an economy built up around us that an individual doesn't need to be surrounded by a tribe to survive. But up until recent years, it absolutely was essential for survival. Just like through evolutionary psychology, those who maintained their good standing membership within the tribe survived. Those that didn't, and they went outside the hassle-free zone, they died. They didn't reproduce. So over the generations, through that refinement and distillation process, those that think for themselves die. Those that conform to the group consensus live and survive and reproduce. A few generations later, You have a whole society of people that all conform to the consensus, and you've eradicated and eliminated all the individual thinkers. Well, we've reached a point where you no longer need a tribe to survive, but it's very difficult for an individual to choose to go beyond that hassle-free zone. Trust their own senses and their own information processor. And accept when you can see everyone else is blind, they can't see this, and when they do see it, because you've shown it to them, and they choose not to see it through willful ignorance, they willfully ignore it. Because they know, if I can see that, they look around, they take the temperature of the room, they go, well, no one else is noticing it, and if they are, they're not talking about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and follow their lead. Thanks for showing me, Jeff. I really appreciate it. It's mind-blowing. But I got to get back to work. I got some other things to do. I don't want to be exiled from society. So I'm not going to say anything either. Yeah, I can see it. And maybe there's some other people out here who can see it too, but they're not saying anything, so I'm not going to say anything. Because I know if I do, I'm going to be in the same boat as you. There's no one else on the plasma fire train, Jeff. We can go join the flat earthers, the mud flood, meltology. There's tribe. When you get on one of those bandwagons, other people that agree with you, that perceive reality the same way you do. For some reason, no one's developed a tribe around this. There's not 5 people who have come out and said, I can see it. The closest they've come is going, directed energy weapon, directed energy weapon. The reason they're willing to say that is because there's 50,000 other people going, directed energy weapon. But when you show them, no, geomagnetic induction, these are forces of nature, that the vast majority of which is not being directed or weaponized, and it is not intentional. Like those trenches that we just looked at. That's not 5G towers making that happen. Now, there are some cases in which maybe these forces of nature, this ground current electricity, every time there's a fluctuation in the magnetic field, there's a surge of ground current electricity. Just like Ben Davison from Suspicious Observers says, there's other environmental conditions where it charges the ground with electricity because it's a high plasma pressure circumstance. You got sunspots and coronal holes charging the earth. And then that high pressure system above disappears. Now the high pressure is in the earth, the electricity, and it always flows to where there's left less of it. When there were those coronal holes, all those highly charged particles bombarding the earth, there was more pressure up here and less down here. So the direction of the flow went that way. Once that high pressure system that was overhead is gone, now the pressure of the electricity goes the other way. And there are circumstances where it could be directed, like creating a grounding effect, like when you touch your finger to one of those plasma lamps, those little circular glass bulbs with all the filaments of electricity dancing around inside, and you touch your finger to it, and a lot of them go to your finger. The one big filament going to your finger is 10 times as big as all the little ones. All the little ones combine and go to that grounding point. Maybe there's a way they can make the earth ground to the sky and release a lot of that pressure in this spot over here. They can touch the plasma lamp, make it connect, make all that energy, that high pressure of ground current electricity, release over here intentionally. And that means they could weaponize it as an attack, like maybe Paradise or Lahaina. Or in other cases, they can direct it out into the field where it's not going to do anything other than burn the prairies of Nebraska, the backwoods of Georgia, the swamplands of Brazil, the Everglades that are on fire right now in Florida. Siberia in the year 2022 had more fire than the rest of the entire world combined. So if they can see that this ground current electricity needs to be released, because if we don't release it intentionally somewhere specifically, it's going to start seeping up wherever it finds an outlet, a path of least resistance. Like apparently those irrigation trenches seem to allow a little bit to release. And it would naturally find more conductive material. the sewer pipe, the underground electrical lines, all the metal in the cars and the buildings in urban populated areas. So it seems to me if it's being directed, the vast majority of it is being directed out into places where it does very little damage to our infrastructure. Much of what I have filmed proves that it's not being directed. 99% of everything I've filmed appears to be random releases. Here, a little there. See the video titled Proof It's Not Directed Energy Weapon, linked in the description, where I create a collage of 6 or 8 different examples. And that's just a small handful of the 100 different examples I could combine together to show all these examples of this electricity, this energy is not being directed as in a directed energy weapon, but it is coming out randomly, sporadically in different places. And I caught Ben from Suspicious Observers the other day. I'll have to attach that to this video and make a presentation out of it, where Ben finally admitted that he knows those chemtrails are particles that are oxidized, which makes them a diffuser instead of a conductor of electricity. It diffuses it. And Ben, who otherwise won't even admit there is such a thing, that if there is weather modification, you couldn't see it because it's up too high. In a live stream the other day with, I forget the guy's name, it was on some other dude's channel, he acknowledged they're trying to prop up the magnetic field in order to reduce the impact, in order to postpone the inevitable, and make this environment a little bit more suitable. He acknowledged the effects that we see on the other planets are like 10 times worse than what we see here on Earth. And he indicated it's because of that engineering with those particles that they spray in the air. Mr. MB3 a long time ago made a very specific video showing diagrams of these nanoparticles, giving very explicit explanations of how those are being used to prop up the weakening magnetic field. And then Mr. MB3 shut his mouth about that and erased that video, but I still have a copy. We'll have to go over some of that too. But that's something that Ben from Suspicious Observers would never admit. Well, he finally did. Like a Freudian slip where you accidentally tell the truth about what he knows. And I'm pretty sure Ben knows about plasma fire too. And people that invest in the Observer Ranch, not just entry-level investment, like I want to come rent a cabin every week or two or a month or whatever. The people that have bet their whole lives on it and their family and friends and their whole future, he probably tells them, let me come show you something. And he takes them around on a little tour, shows them the plasma fire, whether in video presentation or takes them up close and personal, like I did. But I'm pretty sure Ben knows about that too. And when he tells the people that he tells them, now keep your mouth shut. We don't need these dumbfounded dipshits running around like chickens with their heads cut off for the same reason they're trying to prop up the magnetic field, to keep the societal infrastructure, the exchange, the trade, the flow of goods and services going for as long as we can. And if people find out the ground beneath their feet is electrified and burning all over, it's going to be very difficult. And so in order to postpone the inevitable freak out that people are going to have when they notice this, don't tell your friends and family about what I'm about to show you, okay? And the Observer Ranch investor says, oh, okay. And then he shows them. The world's burning all around us from the inside out, and no one seems to notice. Keep it that way, huh? Now, you know what time it is, but apparently you already did because you've so heavily invested in the Observer Ranch that I'm going to invest in you and show you something I don't show most people. Keep it between us. Now I've got some cherries I need to get to, and this video's chewed 40 minutes out of my nightly walk and talk. So, to be continued. And by walk and talk, I mean with the spirit, not running my pie hole on a video.